So if there's podcasts that are around you or cover similar ground to you or that you are a fan of, and it's not out of the realm of possibility to collaborate with these people in some way, it helps your podcast grow and your podcast community around you grow. Hello, people of Earth. My name is Alexei Toliopoulos. I'm a comedian, a podcaster, a film critic, a filmmaker, a writer. I also graduated from AFTRS in 2017 as a bachelor student. I was famously one of the best students they've ever had. And I also graduated from the foundation diploma in AFTRS in 2011. I have co-created a couple of podcasts with my best friend Cameron James, who's also a comedian. I also review movies on The Mix on ABC TV. I'm going to give you my 3 top tips on how to become a successful podcaster, much like myself. Be niche and be specific. It's hard to come up with an original podcast idea. If you want to do a film podcast, there's already like 50,000 film podcasts on iTunes now, so it's hard to break out from that big crowd. The way that you can do that is by narrowing down your field and becoming more niche and more specific. Having such a niche premise is much easier for other people to share. If you hear the podcast idea that 2 friends talk about Mike Myers exclusively, you know in your head already that's something that I'm interested in or something that I'm not interested in. Get good gear is pretty important. You want your podcast to sound good and listenable. What makes a podcast listenable is if it sounds real. If you're recording with crappy mics and it sounds tinny and doesn't sound like real voices, or if the voices sound muffled, that's going to turn people off immediately. If they're hearing wind brushing through the microphone, that is going to turn people off immediately as well. So record it indoors is probably a good top tip as well. I would say that if it sounds natural, it sounds okay. But the higher tech you go and the more effort you put into the technology you have around you to record it, the better it will be and the more pleasurable oral experience it shall be for your listeners. Use the community around you. Listen to your listeners, listen to what they like, and make them feel like they are part of the podcast themselves. I was very inspired with this. The first podcast I ever heard and first radio show I was really into was Hamish and Andy. They were very, very funny, and I felt like I was part of a community myself because they would call everyone the people. Everyone does that. You should just take that from them and from every radio and podcast that ever existed and give your community a nickname. My nickname for my community is the Horny Babies, which is not very PG rated, but it's funny because it's what Mike Myers would say in character as Austin Powers. So it's something that will relate to them and relate to the community and relate to the reasons that they love the podcast and will allow them to feel part of it and be in on the joke. So those are my 3 top tips. If you want to hear more top tips from my beautiful colleagues, you can head on over to the AFTRS YouTube page and hit that little subscribe. And if you want to hear more from me, myself, and Irene, you can head on over to iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts and subscribe to my new podcast, which is called Total Reboot, where me and Cameron James go through the entire cinema history of reboots, remakes, and rip-offs and discuss them, comparing and contrasting them with the original films. And Mic Check with Cameron James and Alexei Toliopoulos is always going to be up there. It's a cult favorite. It sounds silly because we talked about Mike Myers for 60+ hours, but it is actually extremely good, I promise you.